The morning of Thanksgiving starts with loud, angry silence. It's the kind of silence that you've heard before, and even trained yourself to accept so it doesn't take over. My high-rise apartment in Chicago is 32 floors above a city that is too loud for my mood. I'm sitting on the edge of the bed. Outside, the light is a muted grayish gold that comes in through blinds that are only partially closed. It looks like it doesn't want to come in. The room has a draft. That could be just me though. This apartment is mine in a way. It's still home, but I haven't called it that for months. These days, it's just coordinates and a spot where my mail gets delivered and shadows don't bother me. A name I go by is Malcolm Ray. I'm 38 years old. I make $180,000 a year as a senior analyst at a biotech company that models data to find out how well drugs work. The pay is good, the job title is impressive, and my LinkedIn page is spotless. The way my life looks on paper, it has everything a man with goals could want. In reality, it's a drawer full of vacation time that hasn't been used, and a fridge with just one bottle of wine, 2 yogurts, and nothing that looks like Thanksgiving dinner. There's a group text on my phone. There are pictures of Mia's Palm Beach suite ready for the trip coming from her mother. Crystal vases and gold linen napkins were paid for by Douglas Vance, who is my husband's billionaire father-in-law and a professional puppeteer. I take a quick look at the suitcase that is open on the window bench. I only brought 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, loafers, and a book that I probably won't read. I never bring too much. I've learned that getting too ready for a place you don't belong makes the exile feel worse. On the other hand, Maya most likely began packing last week. Coordinated looks, planned photo ops, and made videos of herself doing normal things for her fans. That's her, loud, well-organized, and crazy in a way that gets brand deals and sad likes. The attention makes her happy. What about me? I like being in the background, where it's quiet. Things make sense, and people don't act for the cameras. I look up at the wall behind my dresser. I don't keep the wedding picture up because I'm sentimental. I do it because I've grown used to not seeing it. I do, except today. Today I noticed that Maya's eyes aren't even on me in the picture. She is facing the camera, and her chin is slightly raised. She looks at me with a practiced gleam in her eyes that says, "Look at me and me." I'm staring at her like a fool, eyes closed, and my hands still wrapped around vows that I only seem to take seriously. That picture is one of many hints I missed. The way she stood, the space between her feet, and the way she held my hand half-heartedly. I thought it was nerves for the wedding. I thought it was nothing, but it was a warning at the beginning. I had turned the page because I needed to believe. Anyway, my phone rings again. This time it's Maya. A selfie. She is already in Florida, wearing a white bikini, and standing in front of a mirror. Breakers with captions, "Here we come." Not a word about me. No, it was just her and me. I've only been taking care of a solo act in a play. I pull the zipper on my suitcase shut, and the sound is loud and clear. There is still my tie on the hook by the door. I take it, even though I don't think I'll need it. At least for now. Looks must be kept up. I've never worn anything else to those family events. Neither truth nor love. Just neatly pressed shirts and knots. I look at myself in the bathroom mirror as I put on my coat. Today, the light from above makes the gray in my beard stand out more. Yes, my eyes look tired, but they're also focused. Something is now below the surface. I feel like I haven't felt in a long time. Not anger. Not sadness. A kind of getting ready. Like the stillness before a big quake. Like the exact moment when the glass knows it's going to break. I move my body toward the mirror. No, not to fix my hair. To say the words I've thought a dozen times, but never said out loud. Put down your masks. My voice stays the same. Low. It sounds like someone else's. More sure and stronger. The counter clerk hands me the receipt for the car service. I double-check the flight information and throw the bag over my shoulder. One last look at the apartment. When I'm about to leave, it looks better. It always does, like it's finally calmed down when I'm not there. Sound of early morning silence can be heard in the hallway outside. If I push the button for the elevator, the doors will open and let me in. As I go down each floor, I don't think about Mia's most recent post, how Douglas will smile when I get there, or how her sisters will act like they didn't know I wasn't on the group's schedule. I haven't thought about how Maya has been getting ready for this trip, like it's a job launch, instead of a family vacation. I am not thinking about the mirror in room 1703, about how looking straight at yourself is sometimes the only way to see clearly. I'm not going to look away this time. The waves in Palm Beach looked the same as they did the 6 times I'd been brought here. Perfect, too much, and brimming with a kind of wealth that made people forget what humility was. The kind of spot where cash wasn't just thrown away. It was announced with gold trim, marble floors, and lots of sparkling crystals. With my suitcase in hand, I walked through the door that turned around. Even though it was cool in the lobby, the Florida heat was still on my collar. A piano player near the bar played something light and forgettable, and some guests, who were already tanned at 11 a.m., drank champagne like it was orange juice. I walked up to the concierge desk calmly, knowing that they would give me a strange welcome. Maya never brought up my name when she didn't have to, not in public, and especially not when it would have taken away from her fame. But the man's face still shocked me, even though I knew that. Like I'd done a million times before, I said, "Good morning. Reservation for Malcolm Ray." The mid-50s concierge was polite and practiced as he scanned the computer. His brows knit together like he was trying to solve a puzzle he'd seen before, but couldn't quite place. "I'm sorry, sir." His voice was careful and clipped with forced patience. I let out a slow breath through my nose. "Could you check under the Vance family?" "Maya Vance Ray." He tapped the keyboard again, but this time more slowly, as if the problem might go away if he approached it with respect. "I do have reservations under Vance for a suite and 2 rooms that connect to each other. I don't think my name is on any of them." "No, sir. The reservation lists 3 guests, Miss Maya Vance Ray, Mr. Marcus Langdon, and Mr. Julian Kane." I blinked once. I didn't feel like I was going to explode or have a sudden emotional outburst. I felt like a doll spreading cold, like a faucet inside me had been turned off completely. I knew it was Maya because her entrances were always planned. "Oh, Malcolm, you came," she said over my shoulder, her voice full of sugar and performance. I turned around to see her walking toward me in a cream designer wrap and heels that cost more than my first car. She wore sunglasses inside, of course, and held out one hand with a lavender cocktail, while the other reached out to me like we were old friends. Behind her were 2 men, both ex-boyfriends but of different types. Marcus, her high school boyfriend who became an investor and is now a semi-famous and bankrupt podcast host, and Julian, a model and influencer who lived in filtered light and rented Teslas. They were both here, but I wasn't. "I only reserved rooms for my real love," Maya said just loud enough for the front desk and a few nosy guests to hear. "Marcus, Julian, and me." She smiled big and wickedly, moving in a way that had been practiced in bathroom mirrors and brand partnership shoots. I looked at Maya, not at her dress or her smirk, or the way she casually leaned against the counter, like she hadn't just embarrassed me in front of strangers. I looked at her eyes, which were cold, gleeful, and calculated. The concierge awkwardly turned his eyes to me. The pianist missed a note behind us. A child dropped something fragile across the lobby. But none of that broke through the thick wall of silence that was rising in my chest. I thought about everything I had been through up to this point. The years I had been her rock while she caused chaos. The rumors I had ignored. The way her family would toast our marriage while privately reminding me that they could replace me. Douglas's condescending smiles. Her sister's sideways glances. And the jokes at dinners that I never answered. I thought about everything in one breath and didn't say a word. I didn't defend myself, get angry, or make a scene. Instead, I turned, reached down, and picked up my suitcase slowly. Then, with a calmness that could cut, I walked out. I didn't hunch over or feel ashamed as I walked past the marble columns, the valet, and the couple who looked at me with interest and sympathy. As I stepped back into the warm Florida sun, it hit me hard. It was brighter now, not sorry, just like she was. But I didn't look back. People forget that dignity isn't loud. It doesn't clap back. It doesn't need an audience. Dignity is in the silence, in the choice not to give someone the show they want. And I wasn't giving her that show. I looked at my phone and saw that there were no missed calls. Not yet. I called the nearest taxi. The driver looked at me and then at the suitcase and asked, "Up for it?" I nodded and slid into the back seat. "No." I looked out the window for a second. Not yet, just drive. As the car pulled away, I saw her one last time in the rearview mirror. She was standing there with her boys standing on either side of her like trophies, her drink raised high. It wasn't anger. It was let her have her moment. The real show hadn't even begun yet. The taxi hummed along the Florida coast, passing pastel beach houses and swaying palms. But I barely noticed any of it. The driver had some soft, faceless jazz playing in the background. I didn't feel that. I felt something much more dangerous, clarity. I leaned back against the cracked leather seat and stared out at the ocean. The morning sun skipped across the water, as if it were trying to distract me with its beauty. Just like the state always did by selling paradise as paradise, when there was a rod underneath. I put my head on the cool window glass and breathed more slowly. It was over. Any false beliefs I had about Maya, our marriage, or how important I was to her were gone, made clear in public. She had drawn the line in marble and gold, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to chase her over it. My phone buzzed against my thigh. The follow-ups, excuses, and spin were about to begin. Maya always did these things after a public scene. She tried to make it look like a joke gone too far. She might have blamed the hotel for the mix-up, or she might have even thrown Julian or Marcus under the bus, if she thought the damage was big enough. That was the thing about Maya. She never thought bad things would happen to her. But I wasn't going to play this time. I took out my phone and opened the airline app. There was a one-way ticket for this afternoon's flight out of Chicago. I booked it right away, without any hesitation. No, are you sure? This wasn't a retreat. It was a release. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to the name that had been sitting there like a loaded gun in my phone for months. My divorce lawyer, Miriam Poe. And I had 3 quiet talks in the past year. Nothing official, just planning for what might happen. She always spoke in a measured tone, never rushing or judging. The last thing she told me was simple. You'll know when it's time. I tapped her name and put the phone to my ear. She picked up on the second ring and said, Malcolm, it's time. I told her there was a pause, and she always understood. I'll start the paperwork today. Do you want it filed before the weekend? Yes. All right. I'll email you a few final disclosures, but you're good to go. Stay steady, Malcolm. Thanks, Miriam. That was it. That was when everything changed. It was just a phone call, and I made a choice. But there was a tremor building under the quiet tone of my voice. Years of swallowing my pride, of taking jabs from Mia's family, of being the man who paid, stayed, and kept things running while the circus played around him. That man had left the hotel lobby. The driver looked at me in the mirror and said, Airport now. I stood up straighter and said, O'Hare. Terminal 1. You're leaving early, huh? He nodded as if he knew, as if he'd seen that look before. Maybe he had. Florida was full of broken honeymoons and quiet exits. But this wasn't about running away. This was about power. As we got closer to the airport, my phone rang again. I had missed 12 calls, mostly from Maya and one from Douglas. I laughed dryly. Of course, the puppet master had heard that the show didn't go as planned. He wouldn't like the public shame of his son-in-law leaving without warning. Not even for a man who spent his life hiding scandals with lies and wire transfers. When I got to the airport, I dropped my phone and held down the button. I watched the screen go black, like putting out the last ember of a fire that had been going for too long. I didn't feel happy yet, but I did feel lighter, like I wasn't pulling an anchor behind me anymore. Security was quick. A TSA agent who didn't know who I was and didn't care gave me a routine scan and a quiet nod. I like that. I like being just a man with a suitcase. Not Malcolm Ray, the guy married to a billionaire's daughter. Not the +1 in carefully planned photo ops. Not the walking, talking brand balance. At my gate, I sat by the window and watched planes take off into a clear sky. They all got up at the same time and didn't say anything. I admire how simple they were. They knew where they were going and didn't show any emotion. It made me think of the good old days with Maya, before she became famous and had a lot of followers. We used to make fun of influencers back then. We used to cook badly together and eat on the floor because our dining table hadn't arrived yet. I thought we were building something at one point, but I turned into a prop that she could lean on and then put away when the shot was over. But no more. I got on the plane when my group was called, found a window seat, and let the flight attendant put a small water bottle on the tray table. Outside, the jet engine started up. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. There would be no confrontation, final fight, or dramatic goodbye. There would only be silence and freedom. When I got back to Chicago, the wind felt like the truth. Sharp, I see. Not sorry. As I stepped out of the cab and into the lobby of my building, the cold breeze brushed against the collar of my coat, as if it belonged there. The front desk worker gave me a polite nod, but I knew he already knew everything. I didn't say anything. I just walked past the marble floor, which felt more solid under my feet. It was over. It was over for good. It was over for the trip, for the forest Maya had turned into performance art, for the whole lie. I was no longer pretending to be a part of something I was never really welcome in. When I got to my apartment, I didn't bother unpacking. Instead, I went straight to my desk, unlocked the drawer, and pulled out the envelope I had put away months before. My name written in Douglas Vance's shaky, old script looked almost funny and fragile, but the documents inside weren't. One was a notarized letter co-signed by Douglas's longtime private attorney Arthur Lavin. Another was a changed clause to the Vance Estate Trust. Douglas and I sat in his study months ago. It was one of the few times he'd asked for a private meeting without Maya or her mother present. He was drinking whiskey at 10 a.m., swirling the glass like he was watching time go by. "You know, they think I'm senile," he said, his voice flat but not angry. It was his fault that I didn't answer. He knew I had. He said, "Let Cassandra turn Maya into a brand instead of a person." "But I've always noticed you, Malcolm. You show up and you don't lie to my face. That's rare." I thought it was a compliment, just an old man being sad. But later I told him the truth. "I need you to help Arthur with something. If I ever lose my mental or legal grip, I need someone qualified to step in as interim executive. Not Cassandra, not the girls, and God forbid not Maya." I laughed quietly, thinking it was funny, but Douglas didn't. "I'm serious." The house was on fire. The stunt Maya pulled in Palm Beach was already all over the internet. TikTok videos, gossip sites, and a blog post called "Billionaire's Daughter Shames Husband at the Breakers." Was it a setup? Became popular overnight. It echoed through the fancy lobby as she smugly said, "I only reserved rooms for my real love." Arthur didn't waste any time. He emailed me the morning after I landed to say, "We need to talk. It's time." We met at a quiet restaurant downtown. There was no fanfare. Just two men in coats sitting at a corner table with more history between them than conversation. Arthur said over a black coffee that Douglas had a lucid moment this week, but the medical reports aren't good. The family doesn't know how bad it's gotten yet, but they will soon. I didn't speak up because I knew what he was building up to. "You're acting executive," he said as he slid a folder across the table. The clause was activated because of Maya's behavior going viral. Douglas's mental health is getting worse, and we've already had preliminary talks with the board. I opened the folder and scanned the pages. The signature was there. Douglas is in faint but legal ink, witnessed, dated, and certified for the next 6 months, or until the court finds Douglas permanently unfit. I control the Vance estate, including Ma's trust fund, the family's holdings, their charitable foundation, their liquid assets, and even their spending accounts. "You don't have to take it, Arthur." He slowly nodded. "Then it's yours. Just be ready for what?" I didn't ask. I already knew. I closed the folder and looked him in the eye. "She helped humiliate me," I said. She laughed while Maya dragged me across that lobby like I was a punchline. No one stopped her. Not even a flinched. When I got back to my apartment, I put the papers in a locked drawer and poured myself a glass of scotch. Maya and Douglas's board didn't know what was going to happen, but they did soon enough. The funny thing about real power is that it doesn't make itself known. It doesn't wear high heels or make public statements in lobbies. That voice is patient, quiet, and clear. Maya let it be known that she had betrayed me, and now I would answer it, not with volume, but with control. Starting with her accounts. I grabbed my phone and wrote an email to Arthur. Subject: discretionary account freeze. Body: please put a hold on Mia's personal and discretionary accounts. After sending the message, I poured myself another drink and sat by the window to watch the city freeze over. The next chapter had begun, and I was in charge. The first message arrived before dawn, just as I was finishing my second cup of coffee. The city was still covered in frost and streetlight reflections, and my apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that used to feel empty, but now it felt like it was earned. My phone buzzed once, then twice, and then quickly, making the whole kitchen counter shake like a drum. I looked down and saw that Maya had 3 missed calls, 1 voicemail, and then a text. "Malcolm, please don't worry about it. It was just a joke. I was joking when I said call me." I looked at the message for a long time, as if the words were waiting to become real. It was a joke about making fun of me in front of her ex-boyfriends, her family, and strangers at the breakers. It wasn't a joke. That was Maya doing what she did best, being mean and then passing it off as charm. I didn't reply. After an hour, Julian called again. I didn't answer, but he left a message. His voice sounded too practiced, like someone trying too hard to sound sympathetic. "Hey Malcolm. Man, I don't know what that was about. She told me you were on the guest list. I thought you were in the suite next door. Honestly, if I'd known." He cut me off in the middle of my thought process, because he knew how stupid it sounded. "If only I'd known," he said, as if it were better that I was embarrassed by accident than on purpose. Then Marcus came in. "I had no idea you weren't invited. I swear, man. She said you were staying somewhere else, because you don't like beach resorts. I didn't want to be there. She had me at the last second." What a coward. A man who couldn't even own up to his part in what happened. I remembered how he laughed when Maya told her real love joke. He laughed, and so did everyone else. By noon, the messages were non-stop. Instagram direct messages, missed calls, and a string of desperate attempts to change what had happened. Then there was Cassandra, Ma's mother, with a voice like velvet dipped in arsenic. I almost didn't play her voicemail, but I did, and of course she said exactly what I expected. "Malcolm dear, we've made a mistake. I think everyone got caught up in the moment. You know how Maya is. Let's talk this over before we make things worse." She still thought I needed to be controlled. She still thought I was the quiet, obedient husband who could be blamed with well-chosen words and fake sympathy. I finished my coffee, set the mug down, and opened my laptop. There would be no more whispers. No more pleading behind the scenes. It was time for an official answer. I sent Arthur Lavin an email with the subject line, "Notification of Executive Action," and the body reading, "Arthur, please write and send a formal notice of interim control of the Vance estate. Distribute to all relevant family members and legal representatives. Confirm freeze of discretionary accounts as requested earlier. Additions, amendments, assigned executive clause, and time-stamped video clips from the breaker incident. Send." By evening, there was complete silence, which let me know the message had been delivered. I imagined Maya at the bar, black card in hand, paying for a round of overpriced drinks, but being told the charge had been declined. You could see her shocked eyes and nervous laughter as she tried again and again. She called her assistant, then her mother, and finally her father's private banker. But they all told her she couldn't get to the money without my permission. I leaned back in my chair, and the heater's hum filled the room. It wasn't happiness or anger that I felt, it was balance. For years, I had seen her live without any limits, with every mistake, insult, and selfish act being passed off as empowerment. Now the leash was real. At 8:47 p.m., Arthur confirmed that everything was complete. Subject action was complete. Body notices were sent, and accounts were frozen. You are now the only one who can sign off on the Vance discretionary funds. Things are about to get worse, and we're ready. He added one last line. She'll come running. Don't let her rewrite the story. I didn't plan for her to. Later that night, I watched the news online. Not on TV, but on social media. Reddit threads, Twitter posts, and TikTok stitches breaking down her lobby stunt frame by frame. People love it when famous people fall. And her name was already trending on #MayaVanceRae, along with words like spoiled, haughty, and manipulative. Someone posted a screenshot of her laughing in the lobby and wrote, "Imagine being this bold, and this wrong at the same time." Someone else wrote, "She really said, I only brought my real loves, and now she's locked out of her trust fund." Karma is dressed in a suit. I didn't say anything. I didn't give. I didn't even smile. I turned off my phone again instead. When I went to the window, I saw soft, steady snow start to fall. I felt something settle inside me for the first time in years. Not victory, but command. I was going to keep it. It began with a vague Instagram story. Maya's favorite way to fix things. A soft black background with white sans serif text that said, "Some people just can't take a joke." No apologies, no responsibility, just a tired Dodge dressed up as cleverness. But this time no one believed them. The comments came right away and were very mean. I saw the vulture flying around without having to scroll very far. She made fun of her husband and said it was a joke. Acting like a clown. When a man does something like this to a woman, we'd call it abuse. That's why he left. She brought 2 ex-boyfriends and no respect. Not many people liked that post. But there were a lot of reposts, which made it go viral in the wrong way. And that was just the start. I had a coffee at my desk and used my laptop to watch the circus fall apart. Not with joy, never like that. I wasn't meant to be with Schadenfreude. There was, however, a grim beauty in seeing her carefully curated world fall apart under the weight of its own lies. Gloss Skincare, her biggest sponsor, sent out a bland but final statement within hours. We are reevaluating all of our current relationships with influencers, and as of right now we are ending our partnership with Maya Vance. She's no longer good for business. I refreshed her page and saw the number of people who had unfollowed her go down. Not a big drop or a free fall, but a steady fall, like a quiet erosion. After him was Julian. A woman who said she had been seeing him for months. Said she had screenshots of a text thread that got out. The timestamps fell during Mia's trip to Florida. The messages were not positive. They painted Julian as a shady, fame-hungry opportunist who was easy to manipulate. The worst part was that he used things Mia had posted online before. He used the same lines over and over to impress someone new. 2 of his modeling jobs were over by the next morning. Marcus then showed up. It became public that he had not paid back a private loan from an investment fund owned by, ironically, Douglas Vance's real estate division. The best part was that he only got the loan by denying that he was seeing Maya again. Before noon, Vance Holdings sent out a cease and desist message. The empire of curated affections fell apart in just 48 hours. Maya's boys, brands, and buffers were all over the place, like ash in her golden circle. What about me? I just watched and didn't post or comment. I didn't tell many people. Made one more move in the background. Maybe the last nail. I used my credentials as interim executive to log in to the Vance Trust private account management portal and reclassified me as $1. 2. I gave her a $2 million personal account with restricted access. This means she couldn't touch a dime until I gave my permission. Her credit cards wouldn't stop working completely, but they would get stuck. She could feel the leash getting tighter, especially when the way of life she was showing required constant liquids. After an hour, Arthur called. He said she had already talked to the banks. Freaked out. Say that there must be a mistake in the system. I told her to be scared. She will, but not for long, Arthur said in a calm voice. She will calm down. She always does that. But the fallout is working for now. I hung up the phone and looked out the window. The sky was gray, and snow clouds stacked like blankets against the horizon. The lake was still calm, and I realized something. This wasn't just about getting back at her or making her squirm. It was about finding balance. For years, I'd let her and her family paint me into a corner as the quiet, easygoing husband who could be dressed up and ignored like a nice suit that you only wore when it was convenient. Over a glass of expensive wine, I had smiled through the smirks, nodded through the backhanded compliments, and laughed at the jokes about me. Now I had the checkbook, I was signing the papers, and I was drawing the lines that they used to cross freely. That night, I checked her social media again. Still no apology, just a picture of her staring off into the distance, tagged at some rooftop lounge, with the caption, "Growth never looks pretty when it's real." But there was something wrong with the picture. She wasn't holding a drink or a designer bag, and her eyes and hair looked tired. She wasn't falling apart yet, but the cracks were showing. A direct message with her username showed up on my phone, but I didn't open it. I let it sit there unread, like a bruise forming under the skin. She wasn't ready to say what needed to be said, not yet. I turned off my laptop and put on some instrumental low, steady music without words. I didn't need anyone else's voice in my head. Tonight as I walked through my apartment, I looked at myself in the hallway mirror. Same face, same frame, but something had changed in the eyes. When I looked at myself, I saw a man who wasn't trying to be polite anymore. Mia's world was on fire, and all I had done was break my silence. There was no yelling or plotting revenge, just limits. And that was enough. It took 3 days for the damn thing to break. I was cutting up a blood orange in my kitchen when the video came out. The video was grainy and low resolution, but it was loud enough to shake Mia's carefully curated empire. Someone on the hotel staff must have leaked it, or a guest may have caught it on their phone and sold it to a gossip site. Either way, it spread like gasoline on fire. The video started with Maya standing in front of the concierge desk in the lobby of the Breakers, when she screamed at the man behind the counter, "Do you know who I am? I'm Vance Ray, and my father owns almost half of this resort. Call your manager. Call corporate." Her face was red, and her hair was a little frizzy from the humidity in Florida. This time she wasn't filtered. There was no ring light or gentle blur, just pure unfiltered anger. "Do you know who I am?" she asked him. The concierge, to his credit, stayed calm. "Ma'am, your credit card was declined. We've tried it 3 times. This is a mistake." "I have," she said, looking around as if the marble columns could prove her claim. "I have unlimited access." "Not anymore," someone said off camera. And then it happened. She glared at someone nearby, curled her lips, and swatted the phone out of their hand. The camera jerked and went sideways, but it still caught her last outburst. "You think this place matters to me? I could buy it tomorrow." The video ended quickly, but the damage was already done. Within hours, TikTok went viral. It was shared a lot on Twitter with captions like, "Maya Vance Ray loses it at the Breakers and entitlement in HD." I stepped back from my counter, put the knife down next to the orange, and watched the chaos happen live. Brands she had worked with began issuing vague statements about reviewing worker relationships. It looks like her public relations team worked hard to control the story, but the video was too raw and showed too many things that people hate. Wealth without limits, privilege without shame, and beauty turning into a temper tantrum. She tried to post anyway. At noon, she shared a softly lit selfie with the caption, "The truth always comes out, sometimes in pain, sometimes in fire." What was said didn't go well. You yelled at a hotel worker, not the universe. Girl, this isn't a healing arc, it's karma. Fire. More like the fireworks of your career going out. By the end of the day, 3 more brands had cut ties. Her agent, who used to be a close friend, apologized but said that they would not be working together again for now. But then she got hit hard. Douglas, her father's board, which was made up of men who had put up with Maya because of her looks and ties to the Vance name, called an emergency meeting. I didn't go, but Arthur told me later that the footage had forced their hand. Douglas was awake and aware that morning for the first time in weeks. He had watched the video twice and then told everyone, "Leave Malcolm in charge. That girl is going to bankrupt us all," he said. What little trust there was between Maya and her inheritance was cut away like a knife. I didn't text or call her. I just stood there. But I did send a quiet memo to the board through Arthur. Proposed a new structure for the Vance Foundation that would get rid of the shallow, showy charity events Maya had pushed, the ones that raised more attention than money, and instead focus on practical grants for medical communities that aren't getting enough help. That same night, a new clip of Maya appeared, this time from her own phone. A live stream that she had posted and then deleted within minutes. "People try to pull you back when you try to be brave, or live your life outside the box," she said, her eyes wild and her mascara smudged. It was supposed to sound strong, but it came off as desperate. Her followers didn't defend her, they made fun of her. "Girl, no one pulled you back. Your pride got in the way. This is like seeing someone lose Monopoly and flip the board." I had to turn away, because it's scary to see someone fall apart in real life, especially someone you used to love. I was there for her during her depressive episodes, emotional crashes, and times when the pressure of being perfect online broke her. But this wasn't one of those times. This was a woman facing consequences and refusing to see them. That night, I walked along the edge of Lake Michigan as soft, quiet snow fell. The city sparkled in the frost, and my breath was foggy. I let the cold hurt my cheeks, because part of me still remembered the Maya I married. The one who cried while watching nature documentaries and read poetry barefoot in our first apartment. The one who held my hand during job interviews and whispered, "You've got this." That woman hadn't yelled at hotel staff or put me down in front of a crowd. I missed her, but she was gone. I looked down and saw someone I didn't recognize. As I walked, my phone vibrated. It was a new email from Arthur Lavin. The subject line said "full control," and the body said "the board has voted. You are now confirmed as executive while Douglas is out, with full authority and no challenges expected." I closed the phone and put it in my coat pocket. Maya was still on fire, but I was already building something better. Everything back in Chicago had an edge to it. The skyline outside my apartment was crisper in the winter, and the air was heavier with the threat of a storm that hadn't quite arrived yet. My new place looked out over Lake Michigan, which was still frozen, but I knew that chaos was always moving beneath the surface. I didn't make the world stop just because I did. For the next few days, I kept quiet, which was a treat I hadn't had in years. There was a strange power in being free from Mia's crazy world. I hadn't answered a single call, text, or direct message from her in the past week. She tried, but I wasn't interested in playing her game or hearing any more excuses or explanations. Instead, I spent hours at my desk reorganizing the Vance Foundation and taking the focus off of the pointless vanity projects Maya had pushed. It felt good to be working on something important that wasn't just a photo op. It was real, it was concrete, and it was mine. I didn't borrow it to make a family look good on a yacht. I put some of the foundation's money into long-term healthcare for underserved communities and gave grants to small biotech companies working on antibiotic-resistant diseases. The Vance family was also quiet. For the first time, they weren't expecting me to fill in the blanks, fix their problems, or stroke their egos. Douglas's condition was getting worse. Cassandra had been quiet, not reaching out to cling or manipulate like she usually did. The power had changed, and I could feel its heavy but steady weight settling on my shoulders. Also, Maya was quiet, but not in the same way. Her world had been broken up. She had no brands, sponsors, or cute Instagram posts from the newest exotic location. She posted every once in a while, but it was empty. Her followers had dropped from millions to thousands, and most of the comments were worried, asking if she was okay. But it was a different kind of worry, the kind that didn't care until it was too late. She hadn't sent me any personal messages, apologized, or tried to make peace. All I could hear was the distant hum of her public implosion, and I didn't need to respond. I was done. I walked by the wall where the wedding photo used to hang, its empty frame a ghost of the past. I didn't have to take it down. It had already left, carrying no emotional weight. In reality, the marriage had ended the same way Ma's followers had, quickly, without warning, and with an unsettling finality. There had been no closure. There was no neat little package to tie up with a bow. She had left long before I did, but I didn't know it at the time. Understanding that I had been holding on to her, even though she was gone, may have been the hardest part. I didn't feel bitter or angry. I just felt tired and at peace with what had happened. I took a deep breath and let the silence fill the room. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to happen. I wasn't paying attention to the phone because I knew it was Maya calling. It had been 3 days since she last called. Her voicemail was calm, almost too calm, like she was trying to sound calm, so I didn't listen to it. No longer did it matter. She would reach out again when she was desperate enough, when the whole world turned against her. Maybe she was already realizing that she didn't have much left to offer without her family's money and social media empire. Maybe she was beginning to realize that she had been living in a house of cards the whole time. I didn't know. And to be honest, I didn't care. What mattered now was that I was in charge of my life and at peace, which was something I hadn't had in years. I crossed the apartment to the kitchen, poured myself another drink, and sat by the window. Back to the city it snowed, but this time it was light and fluffy. As I slowly sipped my drink, the warmth spread through me. I wasn't mad or sad. I was content. The kind of contentment that comes from leaving a life you thought you were supposed to want and realizing you don't need it at all. As I looked out at the city, I heard the buzz again and picked it up. A text message from Maya. I think I finally see you. I'm sorry I didn't do that before. I didn't answer because the silence between us was deeper now. It wasn't just her voice or her absence. It was the difference between who we were and who we were now. I wasn't going to fill that gap or fix something that was broken. That woman had already hurt herself and us enough. The repairs I had been making for years had finally worn out. But that was no longer my problem. I put down the phone and looked out at the snowy city again. The storm was coming. I could feel it in the air, making it even quieter. This time, though, it wasn't my problem. First came the email, then the formal call, and finally the driver. Everything was wrapped in advanced polish, executive timeliness, fine-tuned logistics, and an unspoken urgency that clung to every message. It was Cassandra, Maya's mother, the woman who used to call me Malcolm, dear, while giving me compliments with a cold smile that felt like dry ice against my skin. Now she wanted a meeting. No, Maya. She wanted just the family, which meant Douglas and the rest of the board that hadn't turned their backs on the falling golden image. I didn't agree right away. I let the request sit in my inbox for 2 days before responding. Power isn't just doing something. It's pausing and letting them wonder if you'll show up at all. But I did. Not for resolution or compromise. I want to see the falling apart for myself. Their estate looked the same, gated, quiet, and a bit too even. As the car pulled into the circular driveway, I could already see the shadows of Cassandra, Douglas, and 2 board members waiting as if this were a negotiation rather than a reckoning. I walked in and didn't say hello or shake hands or fake a smile. Instead, I gave a quiet nod to the butler who used to ignore me on every family holiday. Cassandra spoke first, as I expected her to. Thank you for coming, Malcolm. Her voice was soft and calm, as if she were still hosting a made-up dinner party. Douglas sat by the fireplace, wrapped in a wool blanket, his eyes dim but alert. He seemed clear for a moment, like he still recognized me, and knew what was going to happen. We won't take much of your time, Cassandra said. There's been a lot of confusion and some missteps, but the family wants to make things right. The family? I said again quietly. Which part? Asked Douglas. The part that laughed while Maya publicly made fun of me, or the part that told me I was lucky to be tolerated at your table? Asked Douglas. That knocked some wind out of the room. Coughed into Douglas's hand. Douglas didn't move. For Cassandra, the word betrayal had too many syllables for her tongue, so she said it slowly. But Maya is not well. She's unraveling. Her behavior isn't who she really is. I raised an eyebrow. And now it matters. She blinked. She's afraid. She's finally alone. That's right. Douglas moved a little in his seat and whispered. I told her this would happen. I told all of you. She needs help. Cassandra spoke up, her mask slowly falling. Malcolm, you were always the calm one, the logical one. Talk to her. Bring her back. I looked at her and all of them. These were the same people who had seen me put up with Maya's temper tantrums for years. Her narcissism dressed up as empowerment, and her stage compassion. They let me handle the worst of her storms because it was easier for them. But now that she had dragged the Vance name through the mud, sponsors had left, and the news had changed, they remembered I existed. Let me ask you something, I said, putting my hands together. Where was this concern when I sat alone in that hotel lobby, while your daughter told a room full of strangers about her real loves? Where was this urgency when I called your bluff and left? No one spoke. I was alone then, I said more softly, and no one cared. I slowly stood up. She'll make it, I told her. She's always been good at getting back on her feet. But this is the chance you want me to give her to change. I don't have to give it. She has to earn it. As I turned to leave, Douglas cleared his throat. Malcolm, his voice was weak but clear. I turned around. You did what I could never do. You left before they ruined you. I nodded once and left. The car ride back was very quiet. I didn't check my phone or read the emails from Arthur, or the media advisors working for the foundation. I needed that moment to be clear and reassured that I was no longer their backup plan. I was now my own plan. That night, I got back to my apartment to find a new voice message from Maya. I almost deleted it without listening, but I didn't. I sat down, turned off all the lights except the one by the window, and hit play. Her voice was low. This time, there was no panic, no tears, and no evasion. "Hey, I know you won't call back. I'm not sure if you'll hear this, but I wanted to say that I finally see you. I see how loud I had to be to hide what I was afraid of. I see how I treated you like a thing instead of a person. I'm sorry I didn't see you before." Then she said, "No matter what happens next, thank you for loving me even when I didn't deserve it." I just sat there for a long time. The city lights sparkling outside my window made reflections on the frozen lake, but I still didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the only answer left. 3 months went by, and Chicago slowly thawed. The lake that looked like glass cracked and rippled back into motion, just like the changes in my life. They were small, but they were permanent. I still walked to work in silence, with my hands in my pockets and my head bowed against the wind. But the man who did these things wasn't the same person who had packed a suitcase for a trip he knew he wasn't really invited to. Maya stopped being seen by the public soon after the voicemail. She didn't make any new posts or get any press. Her verified check mark was still next to her name, but the online noise had moved on to a new influencer scandal. Then another, like dominoes in a game, she didn't have the energy to play. Her silence wasn't a trick, it was surrender. I still didn't answer. The Vance Foundation had grown under my direction. We quietly fired every figurehead consultant Maya and her sisters had hired, and replaced them with community advocates, scientists, and teachers. I also started a small mentorship program for young men of color who want to work in biotech. It was named Fix Points because that's what it meant to me, building my own for so long. Now I could help other people do the same. My salary went up. The board offered me a permanent executive position, but I turned it down because I didn't need the title. I had power, but more than that, I had peace. I moved into a better apartment with less space and more light. There was no framed wedding picture or closet full of gifts meant to impress people I didn't even like. There were just hardwood floors, a deep blue rug I picked out myself, and a kitchen I used. I learned how to cook again, really cook, not just follow directions. At night, I played jazz and read books I used to put down in the middle. I found myself slowly, steadily. Then one morning, it arrived. A small rectangular package with cream-colored wrapping addressed to Douglas Vance in shaky but clear handwriting. There was no return address or card inside, just the contents. I slowly opened the box, not sure what to find inside. When I lifted the lid, I saw a pair of simple, elegant, heavy pearl cufflinks that made me think of heritage. I knew them right away. Douglas had worn them to board meetings, charity galas, and even his daughter's wedding. They weren't just for looks, they made a statement. Underneath them was a note that said, "Real power is quiet. Real love is earned." There was no signature or plea, just that. As I sat at the counter and turned one of the cufflinks over in my palm, the pearls sparkled softly in the morning light. That's when I realized it wasn't a gift. It was a final message. A kind of inheritance that wasn't money or title, but perspective. Douglas had been watching me for a while, maybe longer than I thought. He may have known that Maya wouldn't change, or he may have hoped that I could get the family back on track. And when I couldn't or wouldn't, he gave me his quiet approval, which was the next best thing. I didn't put the cufflinks in my drawer or wear them. I put them on my desk next to a picture of my parents, who are my real roots. The people who taught me to value dignity over money tried to take it away. The cufflinks weren't a trophy. They were a reminder that leaving isn't a sign of weakness, and that being quiet can be the loudest thing you do. A few weeks later, I saw Maya on the street. It was a soft, shaky spring drizzle. Maya, no entourage, no makeup, just her. At first, she didn't see me because she was walking quickly, probably late for something, or just trying not to be seen. I could have ducked away, gone into the cafe behind me, and let the moment pass, but I didn't. I stood still. When she saw me from 5 feet away, she stopped and looked at the shop fronts and the street, as if she were looking for a camera. Then she looked back at me with no smile, no tears, and just silence. I nodded once and she nodded back. That was it. That was all we had left, and it was enough. Forgiving someone isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's a look on a rainy sidewalk. That night, I added one last line to the vision statement for the mentorship program. Success isn't always visible. Sometimes it's in what you walk away from. I never talked to Maya again. I didn't need to. She had her own journey, and I had mine. And mine was finally mine by myself.